Hey, this is Mark Washington with the latest episode of Mornings with Mook. We're going to start off with Rory McIlroy and his meltdown at the U.S. Open. An Open that, at the after the 13th hole, you kind of thought with that two-shot lead that he could be on his way to breaking the 10-year streak of not winning a major. But unfortunately for him, he would bogey three of the last four holes. Two of those bogeys came when he missed putts 5 feet or less. And the question is, can Roy really recover from this at this point in his career? There are some personal issues off the course that he is dealing with. And then the meltdown on the course of a U.S. Open that was going to be sort of the coronation, almost like the Celtics last night, a coronation of who Roy is and who we thought he was going to be. And we never thought that he wouldn't win a major after the 2014 PGA Championship. But as we sit today, he still hasn't. So for Roy, it's going to be interesting to see what he does for the rest of this season and going into the majors of next season. Les Miles is suing LSU in part because of vacated wins when LSU cut a deal with the NCAA. The football program had to vacate some wins. Now, why is this important? Because for Les Miles to get into the Hall of Fame, you have to have a 60% winning percentage. Les Miles is at 59.7 in part because of those vacated wins. Now he wants the wins back. He's suing LSU because he wants to get into the Hall of Fame. I don't know how getting into the Hall of Fame outside of the ability to say that he's in the Hall of Fame, which I know is a big deal, how it changes how we view Les Miles. I don't think that people even take the vacated wins into account. I think vacated wins is something that is so old school that no one cares about and hasn't, by the way, hasn't cared about for years. In a way, I hope Les gets the wins back. I wish you didn't have to sue. I think LSU and the NCAA just need to quit with the symbolic punishments in an era where no one cares about them, where they carry little to no weight. So I hope there's a way Les Miles gets the wins back and just be considered for the Hall of Fame. Not to say that he should automatically get in, but be considered for the Hall of Fame. Summer ratings has always, for sports, has always been this big gap, right? You always had when the NBA and NHL ends up to when the NFL begins. And there's always been sparring for that space. We've seen several iterations of summer football. For me, it goes all the way back from the USFL days, the original USFL days, when Craig James was in the backfield for Washington. And baseball is always going to be there because school is out, and you're going to have families that are going to go to games. But really, for television ratings, it's always been sparring. And so we have summer football, the latest iteration, led by The Rock. You have the big three with Ice Cube and those guys. And again, you have baseball. But boy, what you could not have seen 2 years ago to where you are now is that right now, the summer gap belongs to the WNBA. And it's not close. The WNBA has clawed its way to grabbing that period that people have sparred for and that leagues have sparred for. And they've done it the old-fashioned way. They've built it. And yes, I know there's projections that it's going to lose $50 million. Yes, I know it's still being subsidized by the NBA. Those things don't take away from what they are building. Because, guys and women, this is what building a business looks like. Now, most of us don't get subsidies to build our businesses. And yes, the NBA is subsidizing WNBA, but I'm not going to hold that against them. What it looks like is you're fighting and clawing and competing for dollars, in this case, advertising dollars and such. And you're not going to make $100 billion in the first 5 years. And this is where sports is not real life. And I'm not talking about the players. I'm talking about the owners. Because they are allowed to circumvent a lot of things that regular businesses don't get to circumvent. There is this notion that 5 minutes after you start something, you're supposed to be making money. When in reality, that's not how it works. The NBA is a perfect example. Look how long it really took the NBA to get to where the NBA is. The NFL, people of this generation sees this NFL, not the NFL I grew up with. It's when the NFL's in the late 70s and going into the early 80s, where there was 3 strikes. You figure between 1981 and 1987, 3 strikes. So you guys got to understand, especially you youngins, you're killing the WNBA when your favorite sport essentially went through the same thing. So kudos to the WNBA for grabbing this piece of real estate that others have failed to grab. This is Marcus Washington, and thank you for joining me for Mornings with Mook.